Darcy, welcome back to the show. It's not been that long since you were last here. You've been so busy releasing lots of content. How's things been?
Good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me back on. I know it hasn't been long, but I guess there's some stuff to talk about. Before I get into the film, I did go to Washington, D.C. to see the congressional hearings and got in. It was pretty cool.
Nice, man. Yeah, I think I've spoken to a few people that attended. It seems to have been quite a popular event. So, yeah, that must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, it was full of people that, you recognize, and everybody's, feeding off each other's anticipation and excitement in line. And it was wild. Like the line went forever. By the time they opened the doors to let us in, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to get in, but I was one of the last few people let in. And I was also filming for a documentary that I'm kind of doing on that stuff, not specifically like the congressional hearing, but something related.
Interesting. Is that something to be released next year? Because I know you churn these things out. I just never know when it's
It
going to
would
drop.
probably be a next year thing. Definitely not going to fit in the end of this year. We got some bangers coming out from like James Fox and the like. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to that. Well, Darcy, yeah, it's not so long you were here with Andy Marcial with your documentary, almost like a follow up USO one in Puerto Rico, which was great. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you dropped the latest, two-parter, which is Dark Alliance, which just came out of nowhere. And it was really great to see that someone had really gone to the effort of really kind of bringing this story together, because I think it needed telling in a proper way. So can you just give us an overview of what it's about and why you decided to do it?
yeah, why we decided it was it's not all me. Kari Lindsay and I got a friend, another Canadian friend who was helping me edit and stuff for a little while, Jonathan Robinson. Um, I think we decided to make the doc because in the field of ufology, we're kind of stuck in between the mainstream media and the powers that be debunking everything, and then like false claims and folks that are invading the topic to bring attention to themselves and to possibly make a lot of money. And it's caused a lot of destruction to the overall truth of what's going on. So, yeah, I thought the piece could speak to that a bit and just demonstrate that we should be careful about the things that we're falling headfirst into believing. Um, so that was probably the reason why I made this docu series. The actual overall story is about the sort of 20 and back story, which I think is a very popular one. It still is in ufology. It was pretty much propagated and adopted by Gaia TV, and they made it into this like larger than life narrative that took over. I mean, it was something that was presented on at conferences. There was the TV show Cosmic Disclosure, and the original guy was Corey Goode, and the front man who said all of this is real, and these whistleblowers that are giving testimony to prove the authenticity of 20 and back, they're real. That front man was David Wilcock. Now fast forward, we're in the year 2024. David Wilcock is now channeling Archangel Michael. And Corey Goode has had some depositions where he said, I didn't actually go to space. because he's gotten wrapped up in all these court battles. He said that it was a meditative practice and an astral projection, and he's never actually been to space, which is totally different from what he gave testimony to George Norrie on George's Gaia TV show, as well as his own Cosmic Disclosure show that was on Gaia. So, yeah, I guess it's like a cautionary tale. And we're going to have this subject constantly becoming more mainstream, let's say. I think it's going to get more popular over the next 10 years. And I think we're going to have more people that step up and say, I'm a whistleblower, or I'm telling the truth about the UFO phenomenon, and everybody else is not, So we have to be a little careful with that.
Yeah, it's been funny I think for anyone who's been in the subject for the last decade is familiar with the secret space program phrase, which has been thrown around a lot by people like Kari Goode and David Wilcock. And I was always really kind of skeptical of everything they said. But then, you had people like Richard Dolan talking about it as well. And so I'd always kind of be in two minds, is it real? Is it not? But watching the way it played out with David and Kari releasing 2 documentaries and, making them really kind of glossy, and they look good and they sound authoritative. It's like, yeah, I can understand why so many people out there latch onto these kind of stories and tales of super soldiers and people working and living on the moon and Mars and things. I can understand that, but
battling reptilians and
yeah, I mean, it sounds great. It's a story you want to believe for the excitement of it, but then I think it was always going to destroy itself just by the fact that it isn't true. And so, did you follow it right from the start when Kari Goode first came out on those internet forums?
Yeah. I really kind of started looking into ufology and all these theories back in 2009 when I was producing my very first documentary about Phil Schneider and underground bases. And, that film got released in 2012, and Kari Goode really started to hit the scene 2015, 2016. So when he came up, I was like, wow, who's this? And this was early on in my studying of this whole phenomenon. And I was naive and I was swept up with it too. Probably I thought that it could be real. But I think the thing that really is real is the possibility of a secret space program. So believe it or not, before 2015, 2016, there was a group of researchers that are pretty well known. Let's say they're like OGs of the community. Joseph P. Farrell, Richard Dolan, Walter Bosley. They were actually hosting conferences about secret space program study. But this was all more factual stuff, like starting with nuts and bolts, secretive Air Force missions or, CIA space missions, that type of stuff. We know of the Manned Orbital Laboratory, right? Which none of the personnel that were up there on the Mole Laboratory were NASA astronauts. They were like Air Force personnel, right? So that right there was a classified secret space mission, right, in history. And there are probably a plethora of cases like that. The Manned Orbital Laboratory was kind of like a mini ISS, International Space Station, that was for taking Air Force personnel into space, conducting observations from space, probably, looking at our adversaries and recording data and doing little scientific experiments. That was their thing, right? But when you get into this like bluebird people and reptilian and sphere beings and all that stuff, that really seemed to be like a conspiracy conglomerate story that was data mined from all of the very hot and fashionable conspiracies that were happening at that time in the community, in the UFO community. Not only the UFO community, the New Age spiritual community, because that's really the type of community that appeals to this story. And there's some nuance there. There's like spirituality that's written into the story by Kari Goode and David Wilcock. So it appeals to like this large Christian audience as well that are looking for something more, right? And I think that's the real trick here, is that like this interesting story that is like really good science fiction, if you wanted to portray it that way, it took the UFO world by storm. And, you know, what's underlying what really could be there is this secret space activities, secret space program that has been carried out by many three letter agencies or the Air Force or Navy. And they could be testing out reverse engineered craft and stuff like that in space. But we'll never know. And I'm sure it's to the advantage of the three-letter agencies or the DoD to make everybody think that the Kari Goode and David Wilcock story was, you know, more important.
Yeah, I mean, after Kari Goode had done all the forums and David Wilcock kind of presented him, you know, with all this, like I said, I was really skeptical, but I think the one thing that really made me keep an eye on him is that Kari Goode was the first to, I think, release a couple of the Defense Intelligence Research documents, the DIRDs from ORSAP. And that made me think, well, maybe he has got some legitimacy mixed in there somewhere. And I think that is what kind of confused me a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the trick with those documents being released, and even John Greenwald kind of brought this up early on. So David Wilcock and Kari Goode were working with some ufologists at the time. Most notably was Bob Wood. And this was somebody who actually had access to real whistleblowers and was getting documentation like that. So some people think that those DIRDS documents probably came from Bob Wood. And then Kari claimed that it was just he got them, right? So that's the sort of the weird thing that happened right at the start. But after that release, there was never any other evidence, you know, no other factual documents. They did bring in William Tompkins, who was 98 years old. He was a bit, senile. And they claimed that he had all this firsthand information. He had sketches and was a model maker for the Navy. He wasn't like a high-ranking military official of any kind. But because he had these sketches, he had this very open mind, he started to write about the idea that we're taking submarine vessels and repurposing them to be spaceships, like anti-gravitic spaceships. But there's no proof of that. It's just a story. And again, I feel like part of the magic, what happens in this community is people say, oh, I have a whistleblower. They bring somebody forward that's willing to say, yeah, I was there firsthand, so on and so forth, but they have no real proof. And people just suspend their disbelief. I think there are real whistleblowers. For example, Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, David Grush. These people all had security clearances, high level security clearances, and a history of working in a place where they could be presented with data relating to UFOs or UAPs. William Tompkins and Pete Peterson, no, they were just good talkers. And that is sometimes what, you know, there's a phenomenon that takes place when people are at conferences or people see a powerful orator, somebody who can really present information in a powerful way. They lose their disbelief and they start to trust the person because of the confidence that's coming from them. And that's like a tricky little hypnosis trick or something, you know? We all just fall prey to it somehow.
We do, but do you think David Wilcock genuinely believed Corey Goode's story at first, and then that's why he brought him kind of out of the shadows?
I think so. I do think that David did believe his story at first, but I also think they became friends. And sometimes when you have that relationship where you become dependent on this other person's like supports and friendship, you start to just, you know, agree and go along with regardless. So I think that's part of the dynamic, and they're still friends today, you know? So it's not something you'll hear David Wilcock bring up that often. He doesn't even want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because after, you know, he brought Corey forward, it just exploded. They were everywhere. They were all the conferences, and, you know, it became apparent quite quickly that they were doing very well for themselves. And, you know, I think to me, it was like, well, they're just milking it. They're just getting the dollars and, you know, okay, fair enough. But then, you know, you still saw the growth of their audience and things like that, which again, it's like, do people just want to blindly believe these people, or do they, is there something else there? It became very confusing. And, you know, again, because time was flying as it does in ufology, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. And then you have people like Jimmy Church platforming them on Fade to Black, and, you know, George Norrie there. And yeah, I really struggled with it. It's funny how things just explode so quickly.
Yeah. And I think that's going to constantly happen, honestly. You see it happening right now with certain individuals. I'm not going to say, but like it's going to constantly happen because there's so much sensationalism in this community, and people thrive off the sensationalism. They don't want to be checked by facts or the reality that maybe this person's not really telling me all the truth. Um, and, you know, once these people really get into telling their story well enough, they probably believe it themselves. You know, they convince themselves that this alternate ego that they've created is real. So it's a bit of a tricky game.
It is. And I mean, one thing I always found, Corey Goode wasn't very charismatic in himself, but put him with David Wilcock and he kind of carries him along a little bit, which probably kind of held up the story a little bit better than if it was just him solo. And then obviously you have other people coming out of the woodwork in the years following, claiming very similar stories to almost bolster this legitimacy, if you can call it that, of this secret space program. And I guess that all adds to it.
Yeah. You know, in this docu-series, we got to talk to Jay Widener, who you should have a chat with sometime. He's a pretty interesting guy. This is the former head of production at Gaia TV. And Jay basically explained how they created and molded Corey's character. He actually advised Corey to be humble and quieter, because then it would actually convince the audience. If he's being boisterous and animated and stuff, people will not believe you as much, right? So let David be that person, which he is, and Corey, you be quieter. That's what he said, right? And so that worked. And I think that combo, those two personalities working off each other at conferences and on the shows, it allowed them to propel to such, magnitudes in the entertainment industry. Pretty much, they were talking about pretty much making a Hollywood film off of this stuff at one point. And I think if that had happened, it would have been game over. I don't think anybody would have contested them after that. Just because you get such exposure at that point, once Hollywood is stepping up to produce a film about you, it creates more believers than disbelievers for sure.
Did Jay Widener ever believe the story, do you think?
He says that originally he did. He says that originally what happened was David Wilcock vetted Corey Goode and presented to the Gaia, C-suite staff, Corey is legitimate. So the vetting process was not really done by Jay. And Jay, therefore, had no real reason to disbelieve him. But if you watch, in the docuseries, he basically started seeing all the cracks as they were filming the show. And that's where his doubts started to arise, and he realized, well, this might be made up, and this person seems to be making things up on the fly based off of stuff that they're experiencing in the UFO community and so on and so forth. So, I think Jay quickly started to realize there was no legitimacy.
Yeah, it's difficult with Gaia because obviously if you look at their platform, I mean, I haven't looked in a few years, but it was always very spiritual based. And then you saw more of these kind of UFO programs coming in, and they were obviously fairly cheap to make, and they were able to make an awful lot of them. And it almost seems that they, again, saw dollar signs and that was enough for them, really. Is that how you think a lot of it was seen from the general public?
I think the general public don't even see Gaia TV as an entertainment company. That's what it is, and that's kind of the scary, blurry line of this whole phenomenon, is that you've got a lot of things that are being produced that are not documentary or like informational. They're really just entertainment. I mean, if you go back and you watch Cosmic Secret or Above Majestic, the two documentaries that they produced together. Well, actually, Jordan Sather, he filmed and edited all of Above Majestic. So he really was the filmmaker there. He just had David and Corey sit down, and he got completely cut out of any funds for that movie. So he's actually pretty upset and like seeking legal guidance on that right now. But he, he saw them put those stories together, and everything that was said, if you watch those documentaries, is not backed by any documents, facts, real videos or evidence to back up the claims that are being made. So then you can go back and watch Cosmic Disclosure, and it's like the same pattern. It's somebody sitting in a leather chair across from a leather chair and another person looking at each other, and one person asks a question, the other one just makes claims. That's a little dangerous if people think that that's not entertainment, but that's real. And there are millions upon millions upon millions that think that that's real. They have a large subscriber base, and since the film has come out, I've had multiple emails where people are writing me kind of upset that I'm saying with this overall story that, maybe 20 and back is not real. It's a story at best.
And these are just believers or fans of Corey and David's who are just don't want their bubble burst.
I've had a couple SSP people reach out to me saying that their story is real. Maybe Corey's is not, but that type of thing. So I don't know.
Were you tempted to follow up with them and say, well, if your story's real, then can you prove that to me in any way with any evidence?
I mean, I would love for them to provide proof. Right now, I just have an angry email. I don't feel like replying to that because what am I, it's like not a good place to start a conversation. But of course, like if they could provide material data that proves their accusations, sure, I would be on board with that. Like I said, I think there is a real secret space program that at one point probably took place and maybe is still taking place. Maybe we have figured out anti-gravity technology and we're flying it into space instead of shooting rockets, right?
That's what it would come down to, isn't it? If it was happening, that means we would have cracked the anti-gravity thing. But I mean, let's look back at, I want to talk about the financial side of things because, these guys and others like them all tell a good story. They stick to their words. They never really seem to stutter or change things at all. And then, do we know what kind of money we're talking with regards to the conference appearances, with the 2 documentaries that they made independently, and then go into their contracts with Gaia?
Back in the day before 1091 ripped me off and took all my money for films that I produced and gave them, I was having conversations with one of the people over there that was like the head honchos, and he was bragging to me that in 1 year, Cosmic Secret made like $600,000. And at Gaia, when Cosmic Disclosure was really going off, the stock price went crazy. Like it was the company was worth over 300 million or something in stock. So there was a lot of money to be made from these stories. Like I said, Hollywood was interested. Leon Isaac Kennedy, African-American Hollywood actor that was in Penitentiary with like Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. He was bringing Corey and David into conversations with people within the Hollywood industry. And Antoine Fuqua, who produced a bunch of really great films like The Equalizer and stuff, that whole series with Denzel Washington, he proposed that the Secret Space 20 and Back story was an IP worth like $1 billion, right? If they turned it into a Star Trek type saga. I think they were on the track to try and do that stuff until Corey got very litigious and was like suing Gaia, suing Jay Widener, suing Leon Isaac Kennedy, suing anybody that, or threatening to sue. Like he sent a cease and desist to my friend Richard Dolan, just for Richard Dolan contesting to him publicly, Corey and David, that this might not be a true story. I think that's where things started falling apart because it's, hard for employers to want to work with you if you're going to be like suing everybody, But in terms of money that was made, I know that they were selling courses for 333, this weird like numerology, kind of like mystical ticket sales numbers, like $333 or 111, $111. And in a deposition that Corey Goode did with Leon Isaac Kennedy's legal team, he said from one course that they were selling these online courses for ascension, which is essentially like spiritually becoming higher. I don't know, ascension. Like, I don't even, it's nebulous to me. I'm not like that spiritual, but, you know, I guess they were promising some kind of ascension from these courses. And then one day course that was sold by David Wilcock, he made something like $600,000 to $800,000. So,
I mean, we don't hear about that kind of money in the UFO subject, in ufology in general. You know, it's.
I think because it's their version of ufology is blended with spirituality, so it's like this kind of Christian / UFO narrative, and that community, the broader Christian community, has a lot of money. And they're willing to invest in something like that because, you know, that sounds great. Ascension, like I want to become an angel or like, you know, get out of this hell planet that we live on. Who knows what the thinking is behind there. But I think that's part of it, you know. Right now, if you go watch, David Wilcock does a live stream every Sunday. And his new story, the book he recently wrote and what he talks about now is that he's channeling Archangel Michael. So it's very, you know, he went from UFOs and secret space programs and reptilian alien bad guys and all that stuff to I'm channeling an angel. An angel speaks right through me. You know what I mean? So it's you know, and there were tones of Christianity in the whole 20 and back thing. If you read some of the stuff, like Corey even said he called himself the modern day Enoch, which Enoch is from the Genesis, you know, the old pre Bible stuff. So that's why it had legs, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, you know, with Corey Goode, you know, threatening to sue Richard Dolan over the secret space program thing, that kind of where it started falling apart. What came next with that? You know, because Cosmic Disclosure ran for, was it 18 seasons or more on Gaia? Like, see, you know, how did it fully fall apart?
Well, I think Cosmic Disclosure still did well because Gaia realized this is a cool narrative and people responded really well and they like to come back and watch more stories regarding this 20 and back stuff. So Corey and David left Gaia officially in 2018. And when they left, they denounced Gaia. You know, David had a 27-page resignation letter leaked through Laura Eisenhower on Twitter. He didn't want to publish it himself, but he accused Gaia and Graham Hancock, who was at that point working with Gaia on some shows, of being satanic. So all that drama was happening. And Gaia was basically like, how do we keep Cosmic Disclosure going? How do we replace Corey, who was the main character of the 20 and back narrative? So they brought in Billy Carson. Billy Carson became a new host. They brought in Johnny Enoch. They brought in other secret space program folks like Jason Rice. He was brought in early on, right around the time that Corey and David, just before they left. And they put up a huge fuss about Jason Rice and said he was a liar and that he was making up his whole story to Jay Widener. And long story short, Jason eventually just disappeared. You can't he doesn't really talk about this stuff anymore. But he got scared off by their crew and apparently lost his job at Cape Canaveral. All kinds of weird stuff was happening. And this is what Jay was saying. Anyways, they brought in other people like Tony Rodriguez and Elena Denon and, all these other people that claim to be secret space program astronauts or 20 backers. And, Corey has fought with those people online and been one of their greatest detractors, saying that they're all liars.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I hear all these names, I'm familiar with them, and they all seem to just never bring anything to the table other than just really, really wild claims. Yet somehow these people seem to be the most successful, certainly financially, out of the majority of mainstream ufology. And I mean, I find that so baffling and mind-blowing.
I think sometimes they have good people around them too. Folks that are running their PR campaigns, running their sort of side business, all their upcoming tour dates. And, one of the things that's pretty interesting, if you look into it, like Pete Peterson, this whistleblower that David Wilcock brought forward, he was mentally compromised, right? He was not doing well. His wife had passed away. And around the time that they were doing that show together, Pete Peterson and David Wilcock, the Disclosure show on Gaia, Pete Peterson was not paying his mortgage, and Fannie Mae, or was it Freddie Mac, they foreclosed on his house. So David Wilcock set up a GoFundMe to save the house, and it raised somewhere around 60,000 US dollars because he went to his platform, which he has quite a large base of people that listen to him, on YouTube or read his emails or read his website. And he said, "Oh, we got to save Pete Peterson's house." Well, the problem with that whole situation was that Pete Peterson's house, you couldn't save. Once it's already foreclosed, it's foreclosed. The bank owns it. You can come and make a late, you could be one of the people that bids on the house in an auction or something, but you're not getting the house back. So the question is, where did that fundraiser money go? And that seems to be a very common thing with David Wilcock. He's got this company now called Stavati Aerospace, where he's promised investors anti-gravitic hover cars. And these people have donated millions upon millions of dollars to Stavati, and it's provided no product. So it's like fundraising. And if you look at the community, something you should be really careful of, I advise you, Vinnie, or even people that are watching, if you see other people in the UFO community that are doing fundraising, endless amounts of asking for money for a future product, maybe a school course or, something like that, history usually shows that doesn't pan out too well. The whole fundraising thing, asking for donations, why do you need that?
I agree completely. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I mean, I've seen charity fundraisers, and that's different in my opinion because that's for charity. But
yeah, it goes to cancer or it goes to kids, homeless, people, all kinds of real charities. But there's no UFO charity. So why are people donating hundreds of thousands of dollars towards stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got if you're promising an anti-gravitic car, like at least have a prototype. You look at things like Kickstarter to raise money for a product to be made into something viable. They always have prototypes and things like that. But I'm guessing by this story, there was absolutely no sign of anything physical from David Wilcock whatsoever.
None. Yeah. So it's like that, but I think we just have to be aware. And even like when Lou Elizondo originally came to the community, he's one of the major criticisms he made was like, "Oh, this looks like Heaven's Gate cult," or he said, "I want to destroy ufology." I think a lot of paranoid and like super unhinged people took that as like some kind of threat, like he's this counterintelligence agent that wants to destroy like the whole phenomenon and history of it, which if you read his book, he actually like confirmed all that stuff. He paid homage to it, right? But I think when he was saying he wants to destroy ufology, he was kind of referencing, and this is my interpretation. He was referencing scammers and people that are taking advantage of a vulnerable population of people in general, right? That are preying on people. And I think, this documentary is trying to highlight that type of stuff and provide some information for people so they can pull their head out and look at a bird's eye view of what we're going through in ufology too, right now, because this can repeat in history, in my opinion.
No, I agree with a lot of what you said there. Absolutely. Now, with regards to Kari and David, they did seem to kind of fall off a little bit, but then we, like, out of nowhere, I mean, I admit I wasn't following them very, very closely when they were, once they hit Gaia, I was like, well, that's just it really. But, we see Kari pop back up in this deposition, and now it's very clear he's had all sorts of lawsuits. He's started lawsuits against other people. He's had other people start lawsuits against him. But what was really important, or what differentiated this particular lawsuit deposition that I think anyone that's familiar with it now, it's quite a big deal.
So that deposition was not supposed to go public, but it ended up going public from Leon Isaac Kennedy's defense team. And essentially, Corey Goode is being examined or cross-examined by Leon's lawyer in this court case where Corey is accusing Leon of extortion and embezzling money, all this stuff, because at one point they had set up like a business account for all that money that Cosmic Secret and Above Majestic was making, those two side project documentaries that were launched through 1091 Films. And, Leon, as kind of a executor to that business or manager of that monies that was coming through, was paying people their percentages. That's where Jordan Sather's part of the story comes in, where he got scammed out of his portion of this production money. Because he got like paid for 3 months, and then for the next 24 months, he never saw another payment. Essentially what Corey Goode did was he changed the film company from paying to that business account where it could be managed to his personal account, so it couldn't be managed. And Leon was complaining about that, and they started a accounting inquiry with 1091 to start to find out how the partners should be paid and such. And it all fell apart when the lawsuit started. Corey had sued Leon so that there was no access, and then it would be under like court investigation before monies could go anywhere. So anyways, that deposition tape was recorded by the legal team Leon represented had, and in that pretty lengthy deposition, you can see it online now. Corey admits to many different things. He says that when the lawyer asks him point blank, "Have you been to space?" he says, physically? And he says, "Yes. Have you physically been to space in a secret space program?" And he said, "Well, no, it was like a meditative process. I astrally projected." So that's a huge problem. He also talked about the money that they earned over the years, him and David Wilcock. He talked about, online stalkers and doxers and harassment groups, which, in hindsight, the reality is that there was actually a group surrounding Corey, like a cult, that were supporting Corey, that were harassing anybody that was a detractor of Corey's. They went after Richard Dolan. They went after Stephen Greer, because at the time, Stephen Greer even contested Corey's claims. They went after this individual, Daniel List, who goes by Dark Journalist. They went after everybody that had a differing opinion online. So far as even doxing some people, which is an illegal action, right? If it's not public record and these people are not, public figures, so to speak. So, yeah, it was really messed up. And that deposition kind of sets a record for everybody. But the interesting thing, after that deposition, Corey went to his YouTube channel and he said, "Well, I was forced to lie in the deposition to protect myself, and don't believe that, because I really did go to space."
That's crazy. I mean, the one thing I noticed from watching the full deposition was that he tried every possible tactic to avoid answering most of the questions directly, almost admitting to lying. He really did not want to be put on that spot and kept referring to his intellectual property almost as like a diversion tactic. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. He perjured himself quite a few times in that. So the case with Leon Isaac Kennedy got dismissed. So the court dismissed that case. There was a case against Roger Richards, Ramsour, and Adrian Youngblood. These were all former associates that were part of this group. Like I said before, for them to get so far and become so popular, they needed managers, they needed PR people, they needed, spokespeople and all that stuff. And all those people ended up in like legal battles. So, but those cases got dismissed. Jay Widener was in a case with Corey that cost him over $60,000 in court fees. And that case got dismissed finally. Jay is still upset. He got cancer right at the end of his time at Gaia TV as head of production. He left, was battling that, and soon after a court case for over 2 years that should have never been even put forward. But that's what the people around Corey do. They support him to a fault. And his lawyer is one of his people.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's very clear about this whole story is that it's just a spider's web of connections with people around David and Corey. And I think that's what you did a really good job of breaking down, because you get so lost with all the different names and who's suing who and who believes who and who doesn't. I mean, that's what I really enjoyed about the two-parter. And did you originally aim for 2 parts, or did you originally aim for one but realize it was such a big story it needed to? How did you decide on that?
I have enough testimony and content for honestly like a 6, maybe 8-parter, but I wanted to just get out this piece to start because I thought it was important to just start from that foundation so people understood the origins of all this stuff and where we are today with it.
No, like I said, it's really important. I'm so glad that you covered it. I know there are people on YouTube and other podcasters that regularly talk about David Wilcock and Corey Goode and that secret space program con, let's say. But I think it did need that extra kind of bit of just to be shown to more people. And I think you did great with that. So what has been the overall response from Corey Goode and anyone else mentioned in it?
I haven't had any response from him or
no
lawsuits.
David.
Not yet.
Because I know around the time it released, there were people that I follow on social media were sharing it and stuff. And within a day or two, they were posting screenshots that Corey Goode had blocked them on X, just for sharing the documentary.
Yeah, Chrissy Newton was blocked by because she actually did the debrief article on what we presented in the docu-series, and she actually interviewed Jay Widener as well to get some firsthand testimony from that whole story. So when the article got published, I actually tagged David and Corey because I want to have some kind of response from them, but it was immediate block for me. I think David likes Chrissy because he didn't block her, but he blocked me.
Wow. I mean, I'd say you got off lightly, I think, by the sounds of the way they throw these lawsuits around. I think you did pretty good.
I honestly think, and if you watch the documentary, they were very brazen with why they were doing certain things publicly at certain times. And Corey even said he made threats in YouTube comments and Facebook posts and stuff towards Jay Widener and his detractors that legal warfare was coming. So they had used the legal system to set up cases just to harass their detractors or people that, were not behind them. And that is an abuse of the justice system, right? That's an injustice completely. And, I feel like repercussions are required. And I think, like I said, David Wilcock did the whole Stavati airspace thing. He's actually embroiled in a lawsuit because of that, and a couple other personal suits. And Corey still has a huge case with Gaia. He sued Gaia and their upper, the CEO, the president. That is still an ongoing case because he's claiming that they went on to produce Cosmic Disclosure without him with his intellectual property, which is 20 and back, SSP, yada, yada, yada. And in that case, he's claiming every time you use those, because I trademarked and copyright those terms and stuff, and it's part of my IP, you should be paying me. So if Gaia loses that case, they could owe him millions and millions of dollars for carrying on a show without him. But here's the thing. Gaia made your show. They made your story. It's their story. And I'm sure when you come on as talent to work for an entertainment company like that, you sign a contract that you are talent, but they own the story, right? I'm sure. This is just basic stuff. So I don't know what that court case is going to be like, but it happens next April.
Interesting. Wow. That'd be very interesting to see the outcome of. That's for sure. Well, listen, Darcy, please tell us where people can go and check out Dark Alliance.
Yeah, I'll just toss you the link if they want to watch it for free in the United States. It's on Tubi TV. And if they want to watch it for free in the UK, it's on Amazon Prime for free. And Roku is another channel you can watch the series.
Wonderful. I will make sure that all of them are linked in the description below. And I will urge everyone to please go and check it out. I think it's really important the way that it's been brought out by Darcy and the rest of the people that were involved. It was so well done. And kudos to you, as always, for working so hard and bringing out so much content. It just makes me look forward to the next one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, everyone watching, as always. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon. But for now, take care